Ahmed Bayes, and then we're going to just move immediately from there into things. So what I want to look at is, initially my idea was to focus on the Rashis, but as I went through this, there's too many questions that Rashi presents to just leave it out. So let's go and see what we can do. Let's see where we go to. So Amar Rava says, Tain Maner Leploni. Tain Maner Leploni. So who's Rava talking to here? We're talking about Tain Maner Leploni v'akadesh lecha l'akadesh lecha. So this woman says, you give money to somebody else, and through that money there will be Kiddushin. Then what? Mekudeshes. So the Gemara says, in that such a case, she's Mekudeshes. So Rashi says, okay, so first there's a bit of a Girsa thing, but that's not a big one. And when gives it to money, Amalei, his Kadshili Mekudeshes. That when it says, right, you give money to, so Leo's giving money to Yehuda. And at that point in time, then what? The Mekudesh, there'll be Kiddushin. Why? So what's the issue? What's the Chiddush of this little piece of Mishnah, of Gemara? I'm asking you guys.
She's not getting anything.
She's not getting anything. So Rashi, what should Rashi say? You should just say she's getting nothing. But he doesn't say this. Even though she gets no hanoah comes to her hands. So even though she doesn't get hanoah, she doesn't get anything. She doesn't get a thing at all. Not even hanoah. Now he doesn't say afilo hanoah. We'll get to that, please God. Okay, he doesn't get anything. Then what? Mekudeshet. Why? Midin arev. What's the din arev? How does the din arev work? So Rashi says, "Midin arev mimash matzinush b'Torah." We see in the Torah the following: Shea arev mishtabed lemelveh. What does it mean? That the arev is mishtabed to the melveh.
So Rav, where are we? I can't find the place.
Sorry, I'm on the top of Zayin Amud Aleph.
Zayin Amud Aleph. Oh, okay, cool.
You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, so Rashi says, right, sorry, the Gemara presents the case. Let's go back. Rava, in the name of Rava, simple case. Tain Mara Leploni, she says to somebody, to go, you give money to this guy, right? And what? The Ekadesh Anilach. And then I'll, through you giving money to him, I'm prepared to go through a process of Kiddushin. And if he does that, it works. What? Rashi says, the loy mata hanoah leyada. She doesn't get anything out of it. Not even hanoah. So how does it work? Midin arev. What's an arev? What's the arev process? What does the arev do? How does it work?
It's like a borrower and a lender, no?
Yes. So how does it work? So what's the arev? The arev is the third party. So there are three parties here. Three parties, right? There's the borrower, the lender, and the person who's standing surety on that whole process. So I borrow money from you. Okay, Leo, I borrow money from you, and Yehuda stands surety. If I default on the loan, then what happens?
Then he has to pay.
Then Yehuda has to pay. That's the deal, right? So how does that work? What's the mechanism that gives her the Kiddushin? Because Rashi said there's no hanoah, but it only works midin arev, and from midin arev we can learn this thing out. How does it work?
Because Yehuda, in our case, just as he doesn't get any benefit from that whole deal, right, but he still commits himself, so the woman also doesn't get hana, but she commits herself.
But how? Why would she do that? How does that work? How does that process work? Do you understand where the Rashi is very difficult? The Rashi is very to understand. So, we're going to get that, but before I want to try and understand midin arev. The Gemara will then explain midin arev as it does, but let's try and understand what the arev means. So let's go through the process again. I'm borrowing money from you. There's a third person here. Who are those people in our story that we are dealing with here? There are three people, right? There's the equivalent of the borrower, there's the equivalent of the lender, and there's the equivalent of the arev. Who's the arev there?
The Arab is the woman. Isn't the Arab the woman?
Why?
Well, through this transaction that's happening,
right?
There's the woman's being Kaddish.
Yes. So in what way? How?
Since there's a transaction happening, meaning
yes.
In order to be Kaddish a woman, we don't necessarily need to have her have Hana for this part.
Okay, that's how Rashi wants to say, yes.
Yeah, exactly. We're just saying that since there is a transaction and there's money changing hands, so therefore through that there can be intention and the woman can be Kaddish.
So what is the Kiddushin chal on?
On that transaction between, meaning if
what I'm getting at, if you go back to the normative case of Kiddushin, the normative case of Kiddushin, I give to her, she gets money, I say the words, Shalom al Yisrael, everybody's happy. Okay?
Yeah.
Now what we're doing is she's saying to me, give money to somebody else. The way the Gemara presents it, his kachili, right? He has to say to her his kachili. Okay? Okay. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Makudeshes, right? So he has to say something, but he's saying something without giving her anything. So what is he giving her? Because we've always had this process, the nasanla, right? It's the whole concept all the way through. It's always got to be giving. There's got to be something where she's the recipient of that.
Why?
Because that's how we've always said it. That's
always how we've said it. But we're seeing over here that she doesn't necessarily need to receive something.
Okay.
I mean, a physical thing. The fact that he's doing her intention and there is a transaction taking place, so we said that would be enough.
Because what? What's the thing that keys her into this?
Well, the fact that she's instructing the guy to do it.
Great. So then, therefore, what? So she's getting something out of this.
She's given her consent as well.
Sorry, say again.
She's given her consent to the marriage agreement.
Okay.
That's what the Arab is doing as well. She's saying, okay, this transaction is going to go through, and if not, I will take the stand for it. So yeah, she's not receiving the physical money or the benefit, but has for sure acknowledged and accepted the deal.
So if we would say, as a normative case of din arev, what has she actually done is instead of receiving, she's actually giving. Because you understand that she's now locked herself into this process. Tain mana leploni, and I'll come into it because I'm din arev. Let's call it that for the sake of argument. And that's why I look at the Gemara. So the Gemara says, Medina arev lav afal gav de lo mati ano liyade kamishtabed nafshe ha isas nami afal gav de lo mati ano liyade kamishtabda makane nafshe. Even though she doesn't get anything, in the same way as the arev, even though he doesn't get anything, he's still mishabed himself. So too, in her case, it's the same story. She's makanya nafsha. She's makanya nafsha by virtue of something. The arev case is a completely different case. He agrees to be meshubed himself to the debt. He agrees that. There we are. There I'm with you. But that's because he's just saying, I'm going to be prepared in the case of being a default. I'm prepared to pay for it. Here she's saying, you give money to this guy, and then how does she suddenly become the arev? Because all she's doing is giving. If it's midin arev, that's all my concern is. Do you understand what I'm saying, guys? Does that make sense to you? So Rashi Rashi, it becomes extraordinarily difficult because all of us, he's saying that there is no hanoah at all. There's no hanoah. Since there's no hanoah, she's getting absolutely nothing out of it. And since she's getting nothing out of it, what I'm battling with is how the whole thing, how the thing is chal. So I'll show you. What I'm saying, guys? Does that make sense? Sorry. So I'll show you in the, I'll put it on my screen now, in the Rashba. Because the Rashba, look what he says. You'll see the Rashba. The Rashba says, "Yatain manu leploini v'skarish anilach mekudesh midin arev." Kloimar. What does this mean? V'choizer hu v'oimer la. He's kachli bahanoa zu shani notain matana lezeh. There's matana lezeh b'dvurach. What's the Kiddushin? The Kiddushin is what? Through the hanoah that I give to you by the fact that I'm giving a matana to somebody else. The arev nami bahahi hanoah the kamehemen le mishtabed. See, understand? The arev is always there's certain type of hanoah that he gets involved in. V'lo machmas guf hamamon mamish. Shani makabel the arev never gets the money. V'chein kasava Rambam, we'll see the Rambam. He says that, so we can see that according to the Rashba is implying not like Rashi. The Rashba is implying there's a certain aspect of hanoah, and the Ritva says it even more outright. The Ritva is clear. Perish lav lameimer de lo mati la shum hanoah. You can't say you get to know hanoah out of it. The imkain b'ma mishtabed. So what's the connection? How do you connect in? She doesn't get the benefit of the money that the guy's given out. So I'm borrowing from you, Leo, so Jay doesn't get benefit from the money, right? Because I'm getting the benefit. And he never gets, he doesn't get anything. The Arab doesn't get anything. Lo kesef, not shaveh kesef. Afilu hachi mishtabed bahanoah. The hanoah creates the shibud. Dematile b'ma shehil velezeh al imrasoy. Because why? Because I'm giving the money, or you, whatever, whoever's giving the money is doing it al imra. The fact that she requested it. The hanoah b'chol duchta chashiva kesef. Because hanoah in every place is considered to be some type of has a kesef value to it. And so therefore it's clear that from the Ritva, whilst Rashi wanted to imply that there's no hanoah at all, from the Ritva it's clear that it's not a hanoah. She doesn't receive hanoah of the money. What she does is that she receives hanoah by virtue of the fact that he's giving the money on her request. And if you look in the Rambam, which we'll look at now, that the Rambam says it very clearly. Ha'isha she'amra. This woman says, Tain dina leploini. Matana. So it's not a halva. So it's a whole different story as well, okay? So we never saw, where do we even see that it's a matana? There's no, I mean, a halva. We just made this kind of thing up. That's a halva. Where do we get that from? Rashi wants to say that it's a halva because it's like din malve. But the Rambam is clear. Isha amratain din leploini matana ves kadesh ani locha. Through that, I will become mekudesh to you. V'natan, and then he gives the money. Va'amar la re'at mekudeshes li ba'anas matana zu. Look at that. How is the Kiddushin working? Through the hana of the fact that I gave the matana. Shenasati al pich, because I did it because of you said harei mekudeshes. See, it has to be hana. There has to be something that the whole Kiddushin is chalon, because there's nothing for there to be Kiddushin to be chalon. So how does it work? The afal says the Rambam, shelo igia la klum, even though she gets nothing out of it, harei neit birtzona shenaasa. What's the hana? See, we always think hana has to be something physical, but the fact is like goodwill. She gets a certain nice feeling, the fact that he's doing, it's like when you get married, you'll see Yonah soon, please God. Right? Just the fact that you're doing what your wife wants you to do is like an hana in and of itself, right? Okay? And the fact that the other guy is getting benefit because of her, so therefore she gets great sipuk out of this
So
whole
Rov, in the loan case, is the surety guy, the guy who's agreed to pay if the guy defaults, are you saying that he's getting hana'a because also like he's being a good friend to this guy?
He gets no hana out of anything. So I see what you're saying. You're saying, yeah, maybe there's a hana that he's going to, but he doesn't. He said that he's getting the hana by virtue of the fact that he is just being able to help out his mate, and that is creating the shiva.
I mean,
that's what you
because the Gemara itself, like basically says we learn that it works with a woman from this case. But yeah, it does seem like he's not getting any hana'a, but if you're saying she is, then you could say he is also maybe.
Yeah, you have to say that. That's interesting because if you can see now that the next Rambam is a Rambam Hilchos Mechira, where it's exactly the same case, except it's not dealing with Kiddushin, it's talking with Mechira. You give the money to the other guy and thereby, right, I'll sell my house to you. It's also the same process. It's the same process. Okay, something to think about. Okay, I think we've got lots to think about on that. And then, these are we're not going to go through this all now. These are all the halachas in Chosh and Mishpat, which deal with din arev. I'm not going to that because it'll take us too long. Now look here. So the Shulchan Aruch says, Amra loy. Now remember the Shulchan Aruch. Sometimes we forget the Shulchan Aruch is not just stam like halacha. The Shulchan Aruch is like the last of the Rishonim. Right, so you have to take him very, very seriously. Amra loy tain dinner laploni ves kadesh ani loy v'nasan loy v'kadsha oisa ploni v'amar la areat makudeshes li. Exactly what the Rambam says. He's got to go back and say areat makudeshes li b'hanas matana zu shekibalti. That this is the fact that I received a gift kirtzoncha according to your will. Harezi makudesh. What's the difference with this case? Look here for that case. Amra lo, she says to him, right? Tain dinner laploni. That's our case, right? Tain mana laploni. There's kadesh ani lo.
Mekadesh over the hana of the present.
To whom?
To the person he's giving it to.
To the
so she's not.
Right,
Yeah.
There's a different case from our case. Right, different case. Right, but it's all based on the same thing. The hana'at matana zu shekibalti. It's all about the recipient. I mean, it's all about the hana that she receives by virtue of the fact that something's been done on her request. Okay, let's carry on in the Gemara. So that's case number one, and we can understand this is a big machlokes here because the trying to understand who's doing what. Now there's also a Rosh on that, and the Rosh says the follows. I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to put it into the. Sorry.
So can I also just ask? So it seems like Rashba and all of them are going on that the woman has to be getting some sort of benefit. So what do they do with when the father takes the money? What benefits is the Nara getting?
Yeah, so that's a bit of a left-wing kind of like a left field question. Right? So because remember, she has no rights to anything at that point in time. So her issues is owned by the father. So since her issues is owned by the father, he gets the benefit on kind of like on her behalf in inverted commas. You understand that?
Yeah.
So it's all about who owns the issues. It's not only the person, that's actually an interesting question that you're asking there because it's never about the person. No one's buying her. She's not being bought. She, as a person, not being bought as a wife. It's her issues. It's this concept, which is like kind of an ethereal, esoteric concept of her issues. That's what being acquired. So whoever owns that, which will depend on the age of the person, that's the person that has to get the hanoah, or whatever the hanoah is, be it money or hanoah in this way. Okay, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, cool. Okay, so the Rosh says the following. The Rosh says, "Uchashenatana mana le'oto ploni, amarei at mekudeshet b'mana shenatati leploni." So the Rosh throws in a different case. The Rosh says that what's the Kiddushin? The Kiddushin is not on the hanoah, but the Kiddushin is on the fact that is on the money itself that the other guy receives as a result of her. Not on the hanoah, but actually the Kiddushin is chal on the cash itself. It's clear that the Rambam doesn't hold like that, the Shulchan Aruch doesn't hold like that, but that's the Rosh's opinion. Okay, so that's one case. Let's look at the next case. The next case is, we see in the Gemara, Helech mana v'izkachi leploni mekudeshes midin evet knani. This is a much more difficult case. Okay, Helech mana, which means, right, the guy now goes to this woman and he says to her, here is $100, right? V'izkachi leploni. Okay, and what? And through this money, you become mekudeshet to somebody else. Okay, so then what? Mekudeshes midin evet knani. She comes. The basis of the Kiddushin is the din of Evet Knani. Why? Because Evet Knani lav af al gav delo kachaser v'lo midi kakani nafshay. Even though with an Evet Knani, what? That when he becomes free, he doesn't give up anything of his own. Lo chaser midi. He doesn't pay for himself. Somebody else does it for him, right? Kakanila. Nonetheless, he acquires his freedom, so to speak. So what? So this guy, in the same way, that even though he doesn't give up anything of his own, he still acquires the issues of the woman, right, by somebody else's payment. So So he says he has $100, but you get betrothed to somebody else. It's exactly the same. Where you Yehuda are receiving a wife that, did you know about it?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. So Yonah has decided, he meets this woman and he thinks he's perfect for you. And he says to her, you know what, here's $100. You are now betrothed to Yehuda. We didn't have a Kanani. Why? Because in the same way as Yehuda doesn't have to pay you, so too, Kanani gets free by not having to pay anything. Still gets free. So too, in this case, Yehuda is going to get you, because even though he doesn't have to pay you, because I've done that payment on your behalf. So now the question is, who's doing this? Who's doing this on behalf of this person? So yes, it's your big mate. Yonah, it's very nice of you that you've now been Makadesh Yehuda to start a labor, whatever her name is. I don't know what her name is, Yehuda. I don't know if you've got someone you'd like to have Kiddushin, we can discuss it in a different space.
Yonah's gonna sort me out.
Well, now
yeah, Yoda, do you trust me, Yoda?
I definitely do.
Baruch
All right. Look forward to the announcement next Monday.
Listen, you're out of this group of four, you're the last one left, huh? Last man standing. I don't know what your age is in relevant.
No pressure.
No pressure. No, never pressure. Okay, so says Rashi. Mekudeshes. Sorry, Helach mana v'izkachi leploni v'hu shlucho. So Rashi points out that the case is a specific case where the guy's a shaliach, right? Ela shemekadsha mishelo, but he doesn't use the other guy's money. So you told Yonah, go find me a wife, right? But you didn't give him the cash. So he uses his own money to do it. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Mekudeshet, v'af al pi d'mamoin lav shel mishalahu, even though the money doesn't belong to the person, to the sender. Medinevet knani, it works because of dinevet knani, the tnan, or such the covenant. Koines atzmo v'kezva l'dei acherim, she'acherim poidin oisoi, others redeem him, but mamoinam with their own money, v'koine atzmoi, and through that, it's a crazy concept. Other people are poida him, and he is koine atzmoi. He doesn't lose any money. Okay, so let's look at that because it's not so simple. Because can I marry someone you off without you knowing? Why is Rashi so fixated on saying it has to be his shaliach? Okay, that's the question. Look at the Rambam. The Rambam says, we've seen Rashi. Let's look at the Rambam. Rambam says, Amar la helech dina ze b'matana. Take the money. Ve'izkadshi leploini, and be mukadesha to Chaim Shmerel. Ve'kidsha oisa ploini. Va'amar la haret mukadeshes li bahanozu habalech biglali. Harezu mukudeshes. What did the Rambam just do? The Rambam changed the whole case. The way Rashi seems to present the case is that he says to her, Hare at mukudeshet leploini, buy this money, and it works. Why? Because he's a shaliach. The Rambam seems to say that doesn't necessarily work, right? Because what? Because Amar lahaylach dina zibaratam itzkashi leploini, then v'kidsha oisa ploini va'amar la. It's not enough for the guy who's giving the money. He just sets up the case. How? What's the Kiddushin? The Kiddushin not in the money. The Kiddushin in the fact that she gets Hanoah out of the money that she receives because he instructed it. He hasn't given her anything except for one thing. What has he given her? The Hanoah. So what's the Kiddushin done? The Kiddushin, according to the Rambam, is not done by the money, which is what Rashi wants to tell us. The Kiddushin is done by the Hanoah that she gets by virtue of the fact that somebody gave her money because he said they should. And it's not his money. So what's the Hanoah? What's the Hanoah? Like what real Hanoah is he get? So on a simple level, you can say the Hanoah is just Hanoah. But I think you can possibly say that the fact that he is influential enough or friends enough or has relationships that are good enough to be able to get somebody to put the money in, not on his behalf, because he never gets that money back, but to put the money in order to ensure that this guy gets Kiddushin, that seems to be the Hanoah enough. Okay, I think that's it's quite a fine point. Look at the Maggid Mishnah. The Maggid Mishnah says like something interesting. Right? It says, he quotes the Meim Rasham, he quotes it, Uperishua ksas mefarshim b'shezeh ashaliach shel oisa ploini. Kamoshi perishu b'zeh shel malev, and then he has a whole different discussion with someone else. But he says, right, that's not what the Rambam is saying. The Rambam is not saying he's a shaliach. The Rambam is saying that the guy came and did it, and he's not his shaliach because the other guy has to come along and do the whole process of Kiddushin. And that's an important part. Okay? Okay. So just the Rambam quotes, Rashi quotes this Mishnah in Kiddushin later on, Chaf Beis Amud Beis, where he says that in the din of Eveknani, that it says that his koines atzma bekesev aledei acherim, she'acherim put in, etc. Look at the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Evet knani nikne bekesef v'shtar v'chazaka. V'koines atzma bekesef al yedei acherim uv'shtar al yedei atzmoi. Divrei Rabbi Meir. וחכמים אומרים, בכסף על ידי עצמו ושטר על ידי אחרים, בלבד שיהיה הכסף משל אחרים. It always has to be משל אחרים. Rashi says, בכסף על ידי אחרים, שיתנו לרבי על מנה שיהיה זה בן חורין. The condition of the giving of the money is in order that this slave will become a ben chorin. אבל הוא עצמו לא יקבל מהם. Doesn't get anything from him. ואפילו על מנה שאין לרבי רשוס בוי, דכסבר אין קניין לעבד בלא רבי. Okay, also that's a complicated thing in that sugya there, which please God, we'll get there. But Rashi's whole thing is clear that the guy never has to get this enjoyment, and that is what everybody is trying to understand, is that if the guy, how do you make an acquisition with the guy not really knowing what's going on? Because that's Rashi's problem. He must be a shaliach. The Rambam says no, he's just doing it, and then he hears about it, and he goes to this woman, and he says what he has to do. So therefore, the Shulchan Aruch here in Ibn Ezra says, "Amal lahei dinar misheli." V'izkatshi leploini, v'oisoi ploini aso shaliach. He made him a shaliach. Can you see? Except oshelo aso shaliach. Maybe he didn't make him a shaliach. Maybe he didn't ask Yoda to do this for you. He just decided on his own. He was sitting with his wife, and they said, "Oh, I've got the right girl for you." Boom. There we go. V'amala oisoi ploini izkatshi b'mana shenasan lech ploini haredim akudeshes. But at the end of the day, right, the guy still, the person, you would have still have to do the Kiddushin. That's according to the Shulchan Aruch. But look at this Rashba. We'll finish with this Rashba. The Rashba asks a question which I think is quite nice. He says here, Perish Rashi, v'hu sha'asau shaliach, el sha'ma'ot shelo. Right, that he made him a shaliach, but the ma'ot, the money is his. Lo ma'ar she'im lo asau shaliach, the way we learned Rashi, eina mekudeshet. She doesn't become mekudeshes. And even if they want at the end of the process, it doesn't work. Why? Mishum the b'shas Kiddushin mi'aloi makanye, because at the time of the Kiddushin there was no kinyan. Da'iu lo shav shaliach, because he wasn't made a shaliach. So how can I make a Kiddushin on behalf of somebody else if they haven't appointed me to be the shaliach? V'dilma lo nisratza mi karabach. Maybe that's not what he wanted. Okay, so the Rashba now throws in a great question. What do you mean you didn't want it from your Ikara? Why would you not want it? Who cares whether he wants it or not? Who cares whether he made it make you a shaliach or not? We have this unbelievable klal. It's an unbelievable klal. This concept of that you can be zoichet to somebody else, even for someone else, even though they're not there and they don't give you the permission. Because since it's a schus, it's appropriate that the person can do it on your behalf. What a thing, you got yourself a wife. That's quite a schus. This, it's geschmack, I think it's cute. Okay. The Shema ba'acheres neichale says, hold on a second. It's not necessarily a schus, because Yona brought you, Rochel Zelda, but you actually like Chaneshayna. Okay? And now you're in shtoch, because he's now been makadish you to the wrong chick, right? The wrong woman. It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't it? And now that you're connected to her, you can't find somebody else. And that's this whole Gemara Ksuvos about this whole story that is good. I don't want to go into that, okay? But so Ve'im Toimar. So I'm going to leave it to the next paragraph. Ve'im Toimar, and maybe you're going to say Shani Hacha. He says, what's the issue? The Ilo Neichale Magarish Labal Korcha. So then just you have a Gerushin against the will. Lo he the afu mafsid. You can't say that. Why not? Because there's going to be losses. In other words, we are assuming that there's a zachin shanim shalol lefanav, It comes along the Rashba and he says, look here carefully. You must understand how this would work. If the person then says, well, you can just divorce, it's not an issue. It is an issue. Why? Because number one, the tzarich litain schara soifer beget. You got to pay the guy to write the gate. That's already a loss. V'oid she'atam esiyah sheim rashi magarish es nashav. You get a bad reputation as a man who divorces his wives. V'oid, and furthermore, you also people say that you bother all the soifrim and the edim. If you, Yehuda, wanted to marry whoever it was, Zelda, whoever it was, I said it was. Okay, and let's say Yonah thought it was her sister, and he's makadosh you to the sister. What's happened now? You're out. You can't marry her. It's done.
Bro, I've made that mistake one too many times, you know.
Kachni really says the Rashba, that's the way he sees it. So he sees that the reason why Rashi is so intent on there being a shaliach is because without it being specifically mandated, right, it's not zachin sha'adam shel. In actual fact, it creates a choiv rather than a sechus. And so there he has to do it. So now the issue, I don't know the answer to this, but what are we going to do with the Shulchan Aruch? Because the Shulchan Aruch says whether it's a shaliach or not a shaliach, and maybe you can say that the answer of the Shulchan Aruch is just very simply that the Shulchan Aruch feels that it is zachin shalol lefanav and doesn't go through that whole space of the of the Rashba as we saw above. Okay, so guys, so I just wanted to throw some insight onto that. We've got a lot more to do on this Amud, and please God, we'll get going on Monday. There was Lior and I were just chatting about the possibility of doing the shiur during night seder rather than doing it at night. What do you guys? I mean, you don't have to answer me now. You can WhatsApp me and let me know what your thinking is. So apparently that's how it always used to be. If you want to do that, I'm happy to do it. The only night I can't do it is Wednesday night. So
I'd be happy to do it during Seder.
During Seder, okay.
Yeah.
Yona, Morty?
Yeah, me too. That's it's good for me.
Okay, so should we make it? Should we make it then Monday night during night Seder? Oh, Monday night I can't. So make it, sorry, can we take it Tuesday night during night Seder?
Yeah, that's fine for me.
Fine. Tuesday night Seder, that works well. Terrific. Brilliant, guys.
Yeah.
Lovely. God bless.
Thank you, Rav.
Thank you.
Guys.
Have a good one.
Again, if there's any feedback you want to give on the shiur, please let me know. I'm giving it the way I'm wanting to, but if you want